All right. I think I mentioned it on Monday, but if I didn't, remember tomorrow is the virtual reality demo in the cafeteria. So it'll be open to students from 11:30 a.m. till about 1 p.m. Might stay a little bit longer if if there's like a line or something, but we're gonna have four different systems in there. We'll have the Oculus Rift playing this really cool Robo Recall game. It's like ridiculous. So, and that's full movement. You move in about a 10 foot by 10 foot space, and you dismantle robots and shoot guns and all. It's ridiculous. It's the coolest VR game we have. Um, and just to kind of give you an idea of why it's maybe so cool is Oculus Rift was about 8 months late with their motion controls, which is why they were the original cool kid for virtual reality headsets, and then they ended up not selling very many of them because the Vive came out, the HTC Vive, which already had hand controls for motion stuff. Well, then 8 months late, the Rift came out with its motion controls, and they're sick. They are so much better than the Vives, and they specifically wanted to regain their market share, so they released a free game with the touch controls called Robot Recall. If you want to check it out on YouTube or something, you can. It's done well. I mean, they did it specifically to try to like show off and try to get the product sold, and they also dropped the price of the Rift. The Rift you can get for $600, and that includes the hand controls now, where it used to be 600 for the headset and then 200 for the hand controls. And then you still need a pretty decent computer to drive it. Um, but it's slick. So we're gonna have that. We're gonna have the HTC Vive set up. So Professor Locklear will be running that. I'll be running the Rift, and I think he's gonna have a choice between you can play a miniature golf VR demo, which is actually pretty fun. I mean, it feels like you're at like a pretty nice miniature golf place. Then the hand controls the putter, and like, it's neat. It's a pretty cool example of actually virtual space and being able to move around, and it doesn't look hokey. It looks fun. It looks like real. And I think also the painting one, which I don't think is all that interesting, but it's more, you know, it actually is what hooked me initially. So it's hard to maybe say that. We're going to have the Microsoft HoloLens down there. We're going to be running a app on there called is it Robot Revenge? I think it's Robot Revenge. So the way that works, and that's the augmented reality helmet. So you can still see the regular world, and there's like these robot scorpion things that come out of the wall, and you have to pinch and shoot them and dodge fireballs and stuff like that. But this is all happening while you're seeing them come out of the walls of the cafeteria and stuff like that. So that's pretty slick. And then we'll have the PlayStation VR set up in there with two different applications. One is a street luge application where your perspective is you're laying on like this high speed luge thing, looking down, and you're going 60 miles an hour on the street. And then the other one is kind of think racquetball, but with with I guess your face. It's called I think it's called what's it called? Well, but it's fun. So you basically are moving around, and your opponent, you're trying to score past them like soccer. So you're moving your head to hit the ball, like making your eye contact with the ball, and it's a fun game. One of the challenges with the PlayStation is coming up with games that are interesting that don't have tons of profanity in them, because the target audience for PS4 is more of an adult audience, and I realize we're all adults in here, but if we're putting it to a public audience in the cafeteria, you probably don't want F-bombs just being dropped left and right. But there are some pretty cool games for PS4 if you are open to some colorful language. All right, so that is tomorrow from 11:30 until 1. Okay. So let's go and look at. So for our homework, let's kind of draw our picture here where we ended up last class. So we have this idea. Do we call it a cave or we call it a dungeon? Dungeon. Okay, so we have this idea of a dungeon. All right. Let's restart Keynote because it doesn't seem to be aware of my keyboard. 200, right? All right, so here's our dungeon, and we decided that our dungeon is going to be a collection of rooms, and we already have rooms, right? Now the issue is, and then a dungeon is probably going to have a way to enter the dungeon. So if we think about kind of coming upon computer science from the main hallway out here, we see the computer science dungeon, and you usually enter a dungeon, and that's like the main room, right? When you think about like a game, when you first walk into a place, it's you're starting in the starting room, and then from there there's exits. Well, the issue we have right now is we kind of have this idea of a dungeon lobby. So we've decided, maybe what we do is we go ahead and put a room built into the dungeon to begin with, and maybe this is kind of the lobby of the dungeon, okay? And then when we add rooms to the dungeon, which is kind of what we were supposed to do for our homework assignment, that's when we kind of tack on things like S120, CS Hall, S118, and MacLab. All right. But the issue is when we write a function to add a room to our dungeon, we can link these guys off the lobby. So the lobby kind of gives you a list of rooms, right? But we have well, at this point at least, we don't have a clean way of linking these rooms to each other. Does that make sense? All right, so let's go ahead and let's just get it up to the point where we have our lobby. We have 4 rooms in our lobby that we can kind of walk into if we wanted to as the player, just as our starting point. And then we can kind of think, how do we solve the problem of allowing us to pick the starting room? Maybe instead of walking into the lobby, you have you decide that the CS hallway is the starting room. That's kind of maybe the first place you hit when you're in come into the computer science cave. So that would be maybe our ultimate goal. But right now, we're just going to come into a lobby room and see and get the 4 other rooms added to it. All right, so come in here. Okay, so we've gone ahead and we've given the ability for a dungeon to have a name. And then we also set the main entrance, or what I just call the lobby in our little picture, to be a new room. That's going to be the name followed by a space followed by lobby, and this is at the cave entrance, whatever. So we've just given a kind of a generic room that's sitting there at the beginning of this dungeon. And then we're going to have a collection of rooms from there, because a dungeon will be a collection of rooms. We hope in the future that collection of rooms are rooms that are interestingly linked to each other like we had before. But for right now, we're just, when we add a room, should add a room off the lobby with this exit. So we're going to add a room, giving it a name, a description, and the exit. All right. So this lobby is a room. So remember back to our rooms. We can add a exit to a room. Here's our add room. So when we add a room to the dungeon, we will then call the lobby's add room function, giving it the direction and giving it the room we're adding. That make sense? So what we're doing here is we're completing the homework assignment that we were doing, that we were assigned. All right, so we're going to add a new room off the lobby with this exit. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create that room. All right, so we're going to go ahead and say new room is equal to a room, and the room constructor, if we scroll up here, takes in a name and a description. Those are the 2 pieces of information we need for a brand new room. And we have a name and a description given to us here. All right, so there's our new room that we will be adding to the lobby. At this point, it's just a generic room that has a name and a description, but we haven't actually put it anywhere. We're ready to put it somewhere, okay? And this guy is going to be an exit off the lobby. And our lobby is called entrance. So we'll say self.entrance.add room. And the room we're going to add, well, it's what, the exit first, then the room. So here's add room. So we give it the direction and then the room. So our direction we called exit here. And then the room is new room. That's the room we just created. So now we've added that to our lobby. That make sense? Okay, so that's what add room will look like for right now. So then down here, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to leave these guys created up here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment out these linkings for right now. Because actually, if we leave them in there, the world would be traversable. Because, in fact, here, let's leave it like that so we see it, and then I'll talk about it because that's a good reinforcement of the pointers we talked about before. Okay, so this was our little function for looking around and breaking out, showing our menu on a continual basis. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that for right now. Okay, and we're not going to add a player to the room yet either. All right, so at this point we effectively have a whole bunch of rooms, and we have gone ahead and linked those rooms together, even though that's not part of our assignment, and actually is going to kind of make what we're going to have here kind of weird. Okay, it's like it's going to be one of these like fun houses where you go in one room and you go into another, and also you can get to a different one because from there you can never get back to the lobby. that type of thing. All right, so now what we need to do is we need to go ahead and create ourselves a dungeon. All right, so we're going to call this guy CS department is going to be a new dungeon. And we decided a dungeon's just going to have a name. So we'll go ahead and give this guy the name CS department. All right, now we need to go ahead and add rooms to the CS department. So we'll say CS department.add room. And to add a room, we give it a name, a description, and an exit. So in actuality, all those rooms that we have up there, we don't currently... let's just add a couple of rooms so we see it, then I'll show you a new thing we could do. So I'm not even going to use any of these rooms up here for right now. So we're going to add a room, so we need to give it the name of the room, a description, and then the direction off the lobby it will be. All right, so the name of this room, we'll go ahead and say CS hallway. Description is a boring hallway, and then the exit will be to CS hallway or something like that. Instead of east or west, we can say that just for now. Actually, let's make it east or west. That way we can do our comparisons later. Well, and actually, 2 CS hallway would be a long thing anyway. So let's just add this guy. Why don't we just give them numbers like 1 and 2 and 3. Those will be our exits for getting to those rooms. All right. Then we'll go ahead and we'll steal this line. And let's add S120. And we'll just call that guy 2. So we'll just add 2 rooms there. All right. So right now, our dungeon has 2 rooms in it. Well, actually, it has 3 rooms in it, right? What our dungeon looks like is it has a lobby, And then it has CS hallway and S120 coming off the lobby through exits 1 and 2. Okay? Now, in order for us to experience that, so this is effectively what the homework was, what we've done already. Now we probably want to test it to make sure the things actually linked up the way we expected them to link up. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we need to get our player into the dungeon. And when we put our player into the dungeon, we're probably going to go ahead and dump them into the lobby, right? So we'll write a function here, def add player, self player. And we'll go ahead and say self.entrance.add player. So we went ahead and threw our player into the first room in our dungeon, which is the lobby. Okay, and now if we go ahead and right after this, just put a line in that says player look around, we should see that we're in the lobby and that there's an exit 1 and an exit 2. All right, so we'll just go ahead right in here and we'll say player dot look around. Okay, like that. So then down here, we'll go ahead and we have our player defined up here. It's P1. So we'll say CS department dot add player P1. So it'll go ahead and dump them into the lobby, and that add player function just happens to right now look around. Make sense? All right, so what we're hoping we see is we see 2 exits. One, well, we probably see ourselves there. Then we see an exit 1 and an exit 2 that leads somewhere. All right, so here's our exit 1, exit 2. And also here, so CS department lobby, we're at the cave entrance. Seems like we're in the lobby, right? All right, so now we want to go ahead and get some information from the user. So have this kind of start up. So once we add a player to this room, we're gonna kind of put our code that we had before back in, where for our player, we had a show menu, and the show menu is where would you like to go, and it ultimately returns that option, right? So we'll have the player look around, then we'll show the menu, and we'll just have this happen forever until we break out a -1, I think is what we did last time. Okay. So we'll say while true. Do some stuff. Go ahead and have the player look around. Let's say option player dot show menu. If option is equal to a -1, then break. Otherwise, we want to go ahead and try to take that exit. So we have the current room we're in, which should be the room, the player's current room. We have take exit. We ask if that direction is in there, then we actually remove the player. Otherwise, we say no exit found. So we'll say player dot current room dot take exit, and we're going to choose current room for now because that's kind of the direction we're going to be going, right? Current room and self dot entrance are currently the same thing because that's the room we added them to. But as we evolve this, we want our player to be able to walk around the department. So we want to make moves relative to where the player currently is, not just always assume they're in the lobby. All right, so player.currentroom.takeExit. What exit? The exit that's represented by option, because that's what the user would have typed in. All right, and that's going to try to take that exit, then it'll spin back up and look around again. Okay. So go ahead and save that. So that's the same code we had before, or something that looks very similar, I think. So now when we add the player to the CS department, we have it looking like that. Go ahead and run this again. So we're in the cave entrance. We see 1 and 2. We'll go ahead and go to 1, which should be, what, CS hallway? We press enter on there. We need to... Oh, take exit requires us to pass ourselves as well as the direction we want to go. I didn't pass enough parameters to take exit. So take exit, we just passed in the direction. We also need to pass in us. You know, the player that is taking the exit. All right, so now we're in the CS hallway, a boring hallway, and that guy has no exits because we didn't add any exits to it. So that's our current weakness, right? We run it again. Here, I'll do -1 to break out. We'll run this guy again. We'll go into 2. This should get us into S120. Also no exits. So we're stuck again. We have no way to get back into the lobby. Now, we could always give ourselves, you know, when we add something off the lobby, we can then also give it a way back to us. You know, we can decide to add that in. But that's not really how we want our CS department to work. You know, we'd like to walk in, come into the main hallway, right? And then from there be able to go, I guess from that perspective, west to get to S120, you know, so on and so forth. Basically have our whole map out. But the issue is before we did this whole kind of like spaghetti linking, right? We had all the rooms, then we just kind of, you know, connected all the individual things. Well, now we're trying to do it from a top level like this. So what we have currently, well, what our current thing looks like is this. That's what we have currently implemented, right? Let's get rid of those for now. And what we'd like to have is probably, I don't know what, something that it's gonna go like that, just so you don't think it's right off the dungeon. So we like to come into the CS hallway, and then, you know, you kind of walk forward, and then you got to turn right. So then we get to S120. So we want S120 to be reachable, not from the lobby of the dungeon, not from the main screen, but we want to come in. When we enter the dungeon, we're always in this room. Then we have a choice whether we're going to go here or maybe to one of the other rooms. But that's what we want to accomplish. Okay, so we have to brainstorm and figure out how do we actually allow ourselves to build the department this way. What do you think? What mechanisms, based on what we know up to this point, how might we make this work? Because at this point, I mean, you know, we use the term video loosely, but we're video game developers, right? It's text-based, but it's video-ish. It's using a video output. How would you suggest we do this? Would you agree that what we had down here, kind of, I guess I referred to this as kind of like spaghetti connections, while it worked, was maybe a little bit kind of cryptic, right? You know, you kind of had to think about, okay, well, this guy's connected to there, and this guy's connected to there. What might have been easier? Or more convenient, let's say?
They're all connected to the hallway, so you just have to connect to the hallway, right? And then give them the option to come back to the hallway.
Yeah, but in that's just because of the nature of this particular dungeon, right? But even then we have the problem. So once we connect S120, how do we get back out there? Or what if we implement a different dungeon that not everything's connected to the hallway? So we need to kind of have a generic solution for how do we grow a cave? So if you walked into computer science and all that existed was the hallway. So we've given it that initial room, right? Okay, assuming we get down that path. So we give it room one. That's part of the dungeon creation. It's like the main entrance. Instead of just generic lobby, we decide you enter into CS hallway. It's part of what we give the constructor is that description, name and description of the main room. If you made this in real life, we kind of think about this as we're a creator. Wouldn't it be cool to be able to walk into the department, look to our left, know that this room should be there, don't see it, so instead of providing an exit that we want to take, giving a new command to our menu system, maybe to create a room. I want to create a room from that hallway, let's say, to the west. Well, we were doing it to the south, right? If we were keeping that way. So I want to create a room to the south named S120 and have the description Lippman's Classroom or whatever. We could play the game and create while we're playing. We have administrator privileges, right? That would be less spaghetti cody, right? Then we wouldn't have to write most of that stuff. We would just, by playing the game, we can go in and set up our dungeon, as that creator. Down the line, we probably wanted to remember that through multiple loads of the game, right? Because it becomes problematic. If every single time you start playing a game, you have to go and design your entire map. But little baby steps, right? So what we want to do is we want to build in an ability for us to generate a room. All right? All right, so for right now in our dungeon, when we... let's actually not do an add room. We're going to get rid of add. Well, let's actually think about this. We'll leave add room in, but we're going to need to modify it a little bit because we're going to be adding a room to a room that we're currently standing in. All right. So what we're going to do here is, as part of the constructor for a dungeon, we're going to take in the name of the dungeon. Then we're going to take in main room name and main room description. So 2 pieces of information that we'll need to create what used to be the lobby, but now it's the first room you go into, which is the same thing as a lobby, but we're not going to externally tack things on to our room. Make sense? Or to our dungeon. So we'll go ahead and the main room, that's its name. That's its description. So main room name, main room description, that will be our entrance. And right now we're holding a collection of rooms. Really, a dungeon it is a collection of rooms, but it does not hold our rooms as this linear container of rooms. Instead, our rooms are all reachable one way or another from the main room. Does that make sense? From our entrance. Now, later on, we might decide, it might be handy for a dungeon to hold on to a collection of all of its rooms, maybe for deleting rooms or something like that, or being able to jump immediately to a room. If we're the administrator, and we want to go and work on a certain room, since we're kind of doing this internally in our dungeon, we might not want to have to traverse through 300 rooms to get to the room we're working on. Maybe a room has a unique ID and we can, spin through our rooms array here and just insert ourselves artificially into our destination room later on. So it might be handy for a dungeon to keep track of all of its rooms just as a collection of pointers. Okay? So now, when we add a room, so the idea is that I'm the player. I have my menu system up. Before, I could put two different kinds of entries. I could put a -1 that gets me out of the game, right? I can put in other words, which were names of exits, and it would take me on the exit. Now we want to add a command for create. All right, so we want to create a room. And when we create, it's then going to put us into creation mode and ask us, okay, what's the name of the room? And what's the direction of the exit? And that's going to be done relative to the room we're currently standing in. So if I'm standing in CS hallway and I issue the create command, it's going to say, okay, in what direction are you creating a room? What's the name of the room? And what's the description of the room? I give it those three pieces of information, and it will build that room and add it as an exit to the room I'm currently standing in. And then if I look around again, I should see that exit there. Does that make sense? So I should be able to snake through the department, if you will, and build it, I guess, from scratch. So in order to do this, to add a room, not only are we going to have to add a room to the dungeon, not only are we going to have to, we're not, I think we should just dump this because we already have this mechanism built into room. So let's not add rooms specifically to dungeons. We'll add rooms to the room we're currently standing in. That's the way we'll pull this off. All right, so all a dungeon is the main room. We add a player to the dungeon. We throw them in the entrance. That's what happens. All right, they're in the main room. Then we go to the menu stuff. If the option was -1, we're going to go ahead and break. Else if option is equal to create, then we want to go into creation mode. We want to ask them for some pieces of information. Okay, that is, in what direction are you creating a room? So we're going to go ahead up to our players show menu, just steal our input. Okay, so for create, we're going to go ahead and then we'll read in direction. In what direction should we add this room? So something like that. Then, so we'll read that in. Then we want to get the name of the room and then the description of the room. New room name is equal to input. What is the name of the new room? And then new room description. What is the description of the new room? So now we have 3 pieces of information. And what do we do with those 3 pieces of information? We use it to add a room to the current room we're standing in. So we say player dot current room dot add room. And let's go up and look at rooms add room. Takes in a direction and a room we're adding. So that means we're responsible for building the room. So how do we build a room? We give it a name and a description. So we'll say new room is equal to a room given new room name and new room description. So that builds us our brand new room. Then we're going to add a room to the room we're currently standing in. I think it takes direction first, then the room itself. So what direction? Direction is direction. And then there's the new room. So we read in 3 pieces of information from the user. Then we generate our brand new room given the name and the description we gave. We're not error checking to make sure they actually type something in. So potentially it could just press enter and give us a nameless and descriptionless room. We're willing to take that risk at this point. Then we get the current room the player's in, tell it to add a room in the direction that the player selected. What room? The new room. And then we go ahead and we loop back around. The player looks around, and we should then see our new exit. Okay. Now, the way we're approaching this, though, does have one limitation we've now added to our dungeon. Well, we have several limitations, but this specific approach that we've taken here does create one scenario that we do need to be careful about. What's that? Go ahead. Oh, that's actually definitely true. It's actually interesting. That wasn't what I was thinking about, but yeah, I mean, if you say I want to add 4 different rooms to the east, whatever room you added last is the one that's going to be in the east. So yeah, that's definitely a problem because when we're adding them to the dictionary, it'll overwrite the bucket east in that dictionary. So that's a true statement. Not really what I was thinking about, but that's even maybe a bigger deal. We have limited a couple of things. We had already done this once. We cannot have an exit named -1, right? Because that breaks us. That's like a reserved word now. -1 means something else. We also can't have an exit named create. Does that make sense? Because that's now a command. Now we could come up with some sort of special little, signature that you put before commands or something like that that makes sure, to make it less likely that you'd have a room named that, but we're probably not releasing this to the to any app store anytime soon, so we're okay. Just kind of keep in the back of your head that when you do make decisions about some of these things, they do have side effect. Okay? All right, so let's go and try this. Front room. Position, main room. All right, so this was our main. Oh, it's because we changed the way a dungeon is built. A dungeon is now built with a main room name and a main room description, and our dungeon down here, when we built it, didn't have that. So we're actually going to get rid of the 2 rooms we're adding because those aren't things anymore. And now we're going to have a CS department is the name of the dungeon. The main room name is CS hallway. Main room description will be a boring hallway. That's how we build a dungeon now. That makes sense? And then we add the player to that dungeon. Okay, so we're sitting in the our dungeon. We have a CS hallway. It's a boring hallway. We have no exits currently in here. What are our choices? Well, we can try to take an exit, so I can type in something like east, and it's going to scream at me and saying no exit found. All right, we did that. We can type in -1 and exit this. Or I can create. So I'm going to go ahead and say create. Okay, and this is going to pop us into the creation wizard. Okay, so we're in that else if of our if statement. So in what direction should we add this room? So let's say we said to the south, right? All right. What is the name of the room? S120. And this will be Littman's classroom. All right. So now we looked around again. We see we have a new exit to the south. So I can now type in south. It takes us into Littman's classroom. No exits in there. I can now say create. In what direction? North. Ah, we have a problem. I really want to go back into the CS hallway. But right now, I mean, it'll let me create a room called CS hallway, but it'll be a different room, won't it? I want to go back to the same hallway I just came out of. How do I do that? I mean, this will work. I can. Let's give the name a new room name. So we're gonna call this new CS hallway. Another boring hallway. All right. So now I have an exit to the north. Well, that makes sense. I follow that guy, and now this takes me into the new CS hallway, which is another boring hallway. Looks very similar to the original, but we've actually gone into a new dimension. And this guy has no exits in it, even though the other one had an exit to the south leading into S120. Kind of see the issue here? All right, so in the ideal world, we would have what? We'd have the ability to go back to a previous room. How do we do that? Go ahead.
Just have the exit back. Just name the exit back and then put the BSC as the hallway.
Okay, so if you say the exit back, so it's probably easiest to think about this as if we're actually, traversing through the department. Okay, so I've walked into the department, I'm standing in the hallway. Okay, boom, I create an exit to the south into S120. We're good so far, right? I see the exit now. I take the exit to the south. Now I'm standing in this room. My current room is S120. I no longer have access to that guy. Does that make sense? Oh yeah, but what if I'm 10 rooms in? Yeah, so maybe we can create a hack and let us get back, zip back to the dungeon exit. So if we're only one room removed, maybe we can come up with some sort of hack to get back there. But I don't know where I am. Well, I do know where I am. I'm in this room. My current room is S120. I don't know about that guy.
You put them in a list.
Okay, so maybe.
-1.
So maybe we have a way of getting our previous rooms, seeing a list of previous rooms, right? So when we create an exit, maybe that creation process has two different approaches. We can either create a brand new room or a link to an existing room. Does that make sense? All right, so let's add the first part of this in. Bet you can't guess what your homework assignment's going to be. Okay, so now in here, we're going to ask the question. We'll go ahead and reuse option here. So we'll say option, input, what kind of room is this? New or existing? Maybe just for simplicity of typing, why don't we say new or old? 3-letter commands are kind of easy to type in, right? If option is equal to new, we're going to do the stuff we had already done. Else, we need to show a list of existing rooms and be able to uniquely identify them we can pick the room we want our new exit to lead. Make sense? So a couple things that are going to be helpful here. Remember this rooms list that we kept going here? Probably you're going to want to do something with that guy. In fact, I'll write one line of code for you here. When we create, let's go right off the beginning. We'll go ahead and throw the entrance onto there after we create the entrance. Similarly, when we create a new room, we'll also add it to that list. So the dungeon has a huge list of rooms that are in the dungeon. We don't necessarily know how they're connected with each other at the dungeon level, at that rooms list perspective. But we can at least go through and maybe show a list of, print out all the names of all the rooms in the dungeon and let them pick one. Does that make sense? So when we create that exit, if we're doing this else, we're actually creating an exit that leads to a existing room. So we're going to show them all the rooms, let them pick one of them, and then make the exit in that direction. So we'll have to have them still enter a direction that leads to that particular room. That make sense? All right, so homework assignment is that will be due on Monday, since I won't be here on Friday. You have a little more time. It's not going to be ridiculously difficult, but spend some time thinking about it. But remember that on Friday, there will be an exercise to complete during class time. You don't have to be here, but you have to complete it during that 50-minute period. It'll be on Blackboard.
How long would you expect it to take?
I'm thinking 10 or 15 minutes. It's going to be it'll be a quiz. So as if we did a quiz in class, so it might be 5 minutes, might be 10 minutes, not a 50-minute.
So is it going to be like a convert?
Could be a convert thing. Probably will be something related to things we've been doing recently. All right? But you'll have your notes and stuff available to you. So, but also understand that I know you'll have your notes available to you. So, all right.